So you've drawn a really cool piece and you're wondering, how do I take this to the next level? I know I need to add value. I know I need to add shadows and highlights, but where do I even begin? Don't worry, I've got you. I'm Unkempt Snuggle Pepper. This is another episode of Art Critiques from Reddit, and today we have Azula, and we're going to fix a few anatomical errors, and we're going to go into how to add shading. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is fix a few things. Number one, when a woman does not have support, the breasts have quite a bit of weight, especially when they're larger. So they would actually curve down and have more weight down here and not be perfect spheres. So I curve more like that. And this bit of light right here wouldn't be reflected. And then here we're going to have a little bit more of a straight line here. This breast is going to pull slightly because her arm is raised, and that's going to pull on the breast tissue. And then her hair is not going to catch the rim light there. It's going to come down like this. Unless she has very thick hair, which would also be somewhat curly, it's probably not going to move quite like that. It's going to come in a bit like that. And move over her shoulder. This is a little too long. I'm going to take this, move it in a little bit. Oh, I got more of that hair. And we wouldn't see quite so much of this. There we are. That fixes a lot of our anatomy. Overall, most of it is pretty close. Now, let's talk about how to add value. So I would say if you're unsure about shading, I would start in black and white, because then you're only focused on value. What is light? What is midtone? What is dark? Then add layers in order to add the color. Because when we add color, we're adding two things instead of one. We're adding the hue. Is it blue? Is it purple? Is it red? And we're also adding saturation. Is it a bright red? Is it a desaturated red? All of that good stuff. So rather than turning it black and white, painting, and then adding the color, I'm going to add a layer. I'm going to fill it in black, and then I'm going to change the layer mode to saturation. And this works in Krita, it works in Photoshop, it works in Clip Studio Paint, which is what I'm currently in. And now we see where our values are. And I would say the first thing we're going to pay attention to, the first thing that we're going to see is her breast, which I'm not sure if that's what the main focus should be. I would want it more on the face. So knowing that that's how our values are, just the local color, because there's not a whole lot of shading yet, what I'm going to do is think about a top-down sort of warm sunlight. And then for the rim light, I'm going to use this bright blue that is the lightning. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to add a layer. I'm going to take a solid opacity pen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint in all of my shadows. I'm going to select medium purple, and I'm on a new layer. And I know this is going to get shadow. I know this is going to get shadow, so I'm going to go in with a darker purple. This is probably going to be fairly tight, If it's has a boob window. There's some movement, so I'm going to represent that in how I add shadows to the skirt. And what I'm thinking of is if my light is coming down like this, what doesn't get the light? There's going to be a shadow under her hand. There's going to be a shadow in there. And then this is going to be in shadow. This gets the shadow. All the hair that is behind her will have shadow. And I'm not worried about getting a whole lot of nitty-gritty details at this moment. What I want to do is throw in the most basic shadows. So I'm thinking about two types of shadow. One is form, and that is our shadow that if we have a sphere, we're going to have a shadow across the sphere. If we have a cube, different planes are going to receive that shadow. And two is the cast shadow. So I know that the breast is going to be shaded, and I know the breast is going to cast a shadow onto the rib cage. But this is just our first pass, so I'm not too worried about getting every intricate shadow. I want to get the main focus. I would also move this eye in a little bit and move her hair just a hair back. So now that I have the basic shadows where I want them, I'm going to take this layer and lower the opacity. And then merge this layer down. That gives me an overview of where I want my shadows. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go with soft light. And I'm going to add where I want my highlight. Again, I'm thinking from the top going down. And I'm thinking about the overall form. Everything's broken down into basic geometric shapes and art. Even this leg back here is going to get a little bit of highlight. The breasts are somewhat close to spheres. The main abdomen is a cylinder. The face is broken down into geometric shapes. That highlight in the corner of her eye, a little bit on her lip. And I'm going to merge that down. All right. At this point, I'm going to switch over to using a brush. They have everything pretty much blocked in how I want it. I can go, the face could use a little more saturation and a little bit more pink. Especially we get into the cheeks and the nose. I assume this is her bare open stomach, And then this is also going to receive a bit of that light. A note on fabric. So we have a pull because the breasts take up space. And if this is tight, then there's going to be some tension in the fabric. And the breast, so when talking about form shadows, the breasts are going to have a shadow. Bring this in a little bit. The breasts are going to have a shadow, and then they're also going to cast a shadow onto the abdomen. And we're going to switch to a soft brush. Because we are not shading a hard plane change. It's going to be a little bit more soft and a little bit more subtle. Also note that when leaning back, and since this arm is up, that this breast is going to move more towards this side. And then in her face, so her nose is going to get that highlight. We have her cheek, we have her inner eye, we have the bridge of the nose right in here. The lips are a little bit more saturated. That's partly because I put the purple shadow there. This cheek's also going to get a little bit. So this highlight is going to be part of the knuckles. That's her shadow. I assume she has 2 fingers. That's why there's only the pinky and the ring finger there. Now, when it comes to hair, you did well that she has dark hair and you went with more of a purple rather than pure black, so that's good. However, these lines aren't going to go quite as far. Usually there's a band around where we're seeing the majority of the light. And then we have this kind of organic shape moving in through there. Now I would take this, put her eye about there. All right. So we have a bit more rendering. We have a bit more shadow going on. I'm not going to go over the entire piece. And we're going to do a check how our values are doing. So now the focus is not so much on the boob window, it's now more on her face. And I think that's what we want. See, the hair doesn't go quite as bright as we would like. So now there's a bit more contrast in the hair. Now, as for that cool rim light, we're going to go a little bit brighter. and kind of get that lightning going. I'm going to admit, I don't know how to draw lightning very well, but I know that you have your general lightning bolt and you have little feathers that break off from it. I'm not going to go into too much depth about the lightning. However, what I am going to do is create a new layer and add glow. And I'm going to pick this bright turquoise. And as I go over this layer, that's going to get our bright white look. We can also take that layer and paste it. And then I'm going to do a blur with our second layer. And that's what's going to give it that kind of electric glow. So that's going to create our rim light. So then we can take this bright blue and go in on our layer, and whatever is going to be facing this way is going to get that lightning. So her shoulder is going to get it, her hair will get it, this cheek will get it. Since it's coming out from her fingers, they're going to be lit. Hair is reflective, so as this band comes around over here, it's going to capture some of the light. I would move the canvas up just so we can see her cool little Fire Nation crown thing. I like to make a little bit of that bright blue off to the side so that as I'm blending it in, I can always return to my original color. Now, because this is a plane and it's going to collect the lightning, I'm going to bring it in a bit more than just doing a straight rim light. And then as her breast turns away from that light, it's not going to receive that blue. So I'm thinking about what part is going to see the most amount of light. And then in her face, rim light on her nose, yellow light in a little more. And then I don't think the light's going to reach all the way down to her, through her abdomen, but we will give her a belly button. So I know a lot of this is still pretty rough, but that's how I would approach the shading. And that's how I would approach finishing the piece and bringing it to the next level. So we have before and after. Before and after. That's how I would bring it to the next level. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to give it a like, a comment, subscribe to my channel. Down in the doobly-doo, I do have a link if you want to submit your artwork for me to critique. Also, I have a link to buy me a coffee. Have a good one.